The rhythmic splash of water against tile echoed through the natatorium, a sound I'd grown accustomed to over years of competitive swimming. But today it felt different. Charged. Electric. I stood at the edge of the pool, my toes curling over the rough concrete, heart pounding with a mix of anticipation and dread. This wasn't just another practice session. This was my chance to prove myself to the Olympic team coaches, and to her, I took a deep breath, inhaling the familiar scent of chlorine that clung to everything in this place. My eyes scanned the bleachers, searching for a familiar face among the small crowd of observers. That's when I saw her. Coach Evelyn Chen. My breath caught in my throat as our eyes met across the expanse of shimmering blue water. Evelyn's presence was magnetic, drawing my gaze even as I tried to focus on the task at hand. She stood tall and confident at the edge of the pool, her athletic build evident even beneath her team jacket. Her dark hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail, revealing high cheekbones and eyes that seemed to see right through me. I felt a flutter in my stomach that had nothing to do with pre-race jitters. "All right, swimmers, take your marks." The sharp voice of the head coach snapped me back to reality. I shook my head, trying to clear the fog of distraction. This was no time for daydreaming about my assistant coach. I had worked too hard, sacrificed too much to let anything, or anyone, derail my Olympic dreams now. As I stepped onto the starting block, I couldn't help but steal one last glance at Evelyn. To my surprise, she was looking right at me, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. She gave me a slight nod, and in that moment, I felt a surge of confidence course through my veins. It was as if she believed in me more than I believed in myself. The whistle blew, and I dove into the cool embrace of the water. As I surfaced and began my first powerful strokes, I pushed thoughts of Evelyn from my mind. But even as I focused on my technique, on the burn in my muscles and the rhythm of my breathing, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between us. Something that both thrilled and terrified me. Little did I know, this practice session would be the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything I thought I knew about myself, my dreams, and the true meaning of victory. As I touched the wall at the end of my final lap, gasping for air and searching the poolside for Evelyn's reaction, I had no idea that she was about to give me something I never even knew I was missing, something that would change my life forever. The weeks following that practice session flew by in a blur of early mornings and late nights, each day blending into the next as I trained relentlessly. My focus was razor sharp, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the memory of that brief moment with Evelyn. It was as if her smile had ignited something deep within me, a flicker of warmth that contrasted sharply with the cold, competitive world of swimming. It was a Friday evening when everything changed. I just finished a grueling workout and was heading to the locker room, my muscles aching and my mind still racing with thoughts of technique and timing. As I entered the dimly lit space, I noticed Evelyn sitting on a bench, her head bent over her phone. The sight of her sent a thrill through me, and without thinking, I approached. "Hey, coach," I said, trying to keep my tone casual despite the fluttering in my stomach. She looked up, her expression transforming from concentration to surprise.
Oh,
"Hi, Sarah. I didn't expect to see anyone else here this late." I shrugged, trying to play it cool. "Just finishing up. You know how it is." Evelyn smiled softly, and for a moment, we simply stood there in the quiet locker room, the air thick with unspoken words. It was then that I noticed the faint shadows under her eyes and the slight tension in her shoulders. "Long day?" I asked, genuinely curious. "You could say that," she replied with a sigh. "I've been going over team strategies for next week's meet. It's exhausting." I nodded, feeling an unexpected urge to comfort her. "Want to talk about it? Sometimes it helps to vent." To my surprise, she chuckled lightly. "You're right. It does help." She shifted on the bench, folding her arms across her knees. "It's just there's so much pressure on everyone right now. I want to make sure each swimmer is at their best, but it's hard to balance everything." I could sense the weight of her responsibilities pressing down on her, and something inside me stirred, a deep-seated desire to support her in any way I could. "You're doing great," I said earnestly. The team respects you. We know you care. Her gaze met mine, and for a heartbeat, the world around us faded away. There was an intensity in that moment that made my heart race, an understanding that transcended our roles as coach and swimmer. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "That means a lot coming from you." We fell into an easy conversation after that, sharing stories about our lives outside of swimming, her love for hiking and my obsession with baking cookies that never turned out quite right. Laughter filled the air between us like an invisible thread weaving our lives together. But as we talked, an undercurrent of tension simmered just below the surface, an awareness of something unspoken lingering in the air. Each time our eyes locked, it felt like we were teetering on the edge of something profound yet terrifying. As the minutes turned into hours, Evelyn leaned closer as she spoke about her childhood dreams of becoming an Olympic athlete herself, a dream that had slipped through her fingers due to an injury years ago. Her vulnerability struck me deeply. Here was this strong woman revealing her fears and regrets in a way that made me want to reach out and hold her close. "I sometimes wonder if I'm doing enough," she admitted quietly, glancing down at her hands. "If I'm really helping these kids reach their potential, or just pushing them too hard." "You're doing more than enough," I reassured her gently. "You inspire us every day." Our eyes met again, and this time there was no denying the spark between us, a magnetic pull that drew me closer despite every rational thought urging me to take a step back. Suddenly, there was a loud crash from outside the locker room, a metal clang followed by muffled voices shouting in alarm. We both jumped at the sound, breaking our momentary trance. "What was that?" Evelyn asked, concern etching across her features. "I don't know," I replied as adrenaline surged through me. "Let's check it out." We hurried out into the hallway just in time to see a group of swimmers gathered around an overturned equipment cart that had spilled its contents across the floor, paddles and kickboards scattered everywhere like fallen leaves. "Is everyone okay?" Evelyn called out as we approached. A few heads turned toward us. Some were laughing nervously while others seemed more concerned about their gear than anything else. "Yeah, we're fine," one of them shouted back with a grin. "Just trying to clean up this mess before Coach sees." Evelyn shook her head with mock exasperation but couldn't hide her smile as she joined in helping them gather everything up. I watched her move with such ease and grace, her laughter infectious as she teased them about their clumsiness. And that chaotic moment filled with laughter and camaraderie, something shifted within me again. Realization that this connection with Evelyn was more than just admiration for my coach. It was something deeper and more complicated than I had ever anticipated. As we finished cleaning up and began walking back toward the locker room together, I could feel my heart racing again. Not from exertion, but from something far more exhilarating and terrifying. "Thanks for helping out," Evelyn said as we reached the door leading back inside. "Of course," I replied softly. "I'm always here if you need someone to talk to." Her gaze lingered on mine for just a second longer than necessary before she nodded slowly. "I appreciate that more than you know." As we stepped inside the locker room once more, an unspoken agreement hung between us, a promise of connection amidst uncertainty, and though I knew it would complicate everything moving forward, part of me couldn't help but hope for what might blossom from this unexpected bond. But lurking beneath my excitement was an unsettling awareness. Pursuing this connection with Evelyn could lead me down a path filled with heartache and confusion, a moral dilemma that would test everything I believed about love and ambition. Little did I know then how intertwined our lives would become over those next few months, how each shared laugh would deepen our bond while also complicating my dreams, and how ultimately it would force me to confront feelings I'd never dared acknowledge before. As the days turned into weeks, the connection between Evelyn and me deepened in ways I had never expected. Each practice session became a delicate dance of unspoken words and stolen glances, our interactions filled with a warmth that both thrilled and terrified me. I found myself looking forward to those moments when we could share laughter, secrets, and the occasional lingering touch point. One particularly crisp Saturday morning, I arrived at the pool early, the sun just beginning to rise and casting golden rays through the high windows. The water shimmered invitingly, and I took a moment to appreciate the stillness of the space before diving into my routine. As I stretched by the edge of the pool, I heard footsteps behind me. "Hey there, early bird." Evelyn's voice broke through the quiet, warm and familiar. I turned to see her approaching, her hair catching the light in a way that made it look almost ethereal. She wore a fitted sweatshirt that hugged her athletic frame, and I couldn't help but admire how effortlessly beautiful she looked even in such casual attire. "Thought I'd get a head start," I replied with a grin, trying to mask the flutter of excitement in my chest. "You know how it is." She chuckled softly as she joined me at the edge of the pool.
Ida.
"Mind if I join you for a warm-up?" "Not at all," I said, feeling a rush of happiness at her presence. We slipped into the water together, our bodies slicing through the surface as we began our laps side by side. As we swam, I couldn't help but steal glances at her. The way her muscles moved beneath the water was mesmerizing. Each stroke was powerful yet graceful. We exchanged playful banter between laps, her teasing me about my form while I shot back with playful retorts about her coaching style. After an intense workout, we climbed out of the pool, breathless and exhilarated. The air was cool against my damp skin, and as we settled onto adjacent benches to catch our breath, I felt a sense of camaraderie settle between us. "You know," Evelyn said after a moment, wiping droplets from her brow, "I really admire your dedication. You've improved so much these past few weeks." "Thanks," I replied, trying to hide my blush. "It's easy when you have such great coaching." Her eyes sparkled with mischief. "Flattery will get you everywhere." We both laughed, but beneath that laughter was an undeniable tension, an electric charge that crackled between us whenever our eyes met. It was as if we were standing on the precipice of something far more profound than friendship. As we continued to train together over the following weeks, our conversations grew more personal. One evening after practice, while we were stretching on the floor mats in the training room, Evelyn opened up about her past, a story filled with dreams deferred and paths not taken. "I was so focused on swimming," she confessed, her voice softening as she spoke. "I thought if I worked hard enough, I'd make it to the Olympics. But when my injury happened, everything changed." I could see the pain behind her words, the weight of unfulfilled dreams, and it resonated deeply within me. "That must have been really tough," I said gently, "to let go of something you loved so much." "It was," she admitted with a sigh. "But it taught me to appreciate what I have now, to find joy in helping others achieve their dreams instead." Her honesty struck a chord within me. It was both inspiring and heartbreaking. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming urge to reach out and comfort her, to bridge that emotional gap between us with something more than words. But just as my hand brushed against hers on the mat, hesitation washed over me like a cold wave crashing against warm sand. I pulled back instinctively, afraid of crossing an invisible line that could change everything. Evelyn looked at me then, her expression curious yet understanding, and for a fleeting moment, it felt as though she knew exactly what I was grappling with. The air around us thickened with unspoken words as we shared a lingering gaze that seemed to stretch on forever. "Hey," she finally said softly, breaking the silence. "Do you want to grab some coffee? I could use a pick-me-up after today's workout." "Sure," I replied quickly, grateful for the distraction but also acutely aware of how much I wanted to say, to confess everything swirling within me. As we walked to our favorite cafe nearby, our conversation flowed easily again, discussing everything from training tips to our favorite movies, but beneath it all lay an undercurrent of tension that neither of us dared acknowledge fully. The cafe was bustling with life when we arrived. The rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee enveloped us like a warm embrace as we found a small table by the window. As we sipped our drinks, her order always black coffee while mine was laden with cream and sugar, we continued to share stories and laughter. But there were moments when our eyes would lock across the table. Those brief seconds felt charged with possibility, a silent acknowledgement of what lay beneath our friendship. "You know," Evelyn said suddenly, leaning forward slightly, as if sharing a secret, I've been thinking about organizing some team-building activities outside of practice, maybe a hike or something fun. That sounds amazing, I exclaimed enthusiastically. I love hiking. It would be great for team bonding. Her smile widened at my excitement. It lit up her entire face in a way that made my heart race. Great. Let's plan something soon. As we wrapped up our coffee date and stepped back into the cool evening air, there was an undeniable shift in our dynamic, a growing awareness that this connection was becoming something more than just friendship or mentorship. Yet with every passing day came an internal struggle within me, a battle between desire and fear that left me feeling vulnerable and exposed. What would happen if I let myself fall for Evelyn? The potential for heartbreak loomed large in my mind like dark clouds threatening rain. As we walked back toward our cars parked near the pool facility, an unexpected silence fell between us, a pause filled with unexpressed feelings hanging heavily in the air. I had fun today, Evelyn said finally, breaking through my thoughts as she turned to face me under the soft glow of streetlights. Me too, I replied sincerely, feeling warmth spread through my chest at her words. There was something in her gaze then, a flicker of vulnerability mirrored in my own, and for an instant, it felt like all barriers were crumbling away between us. But just as quickly as it appeared, that moment slipped through my fingers like sand as doubt crept back in, fearful questions swirling around in my mind. What if this connection ruined everything? What if people found out? What if she didn't feel the same way? And so instead of leaning closer, or taking that leap into unknown territory with her, of exploring whatever this growing bond could become, I stepped back slightly and forced a smile onto my face. See you at practice tomorrow? I asked lightly. Definitely, she replied with a nod, but not without an edge of disappointment shadowing her features, a fleeting glimpse into how much this connection meant to both of us, yet remained unacknowledged. As we parted ways that night, my heart heavy with longing, I couldn't shake off the feeling that every moment spent together only deepened my internal conflict, desire battling against fear, hope clashing with apprehension, love yearning for acknowledgement while remaining hidden behind walls built from uncertainty. But despite all this turmoil within me, the hesitation lingering like mist in early morning light, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever path lay ahead would be filled with challenges unlike any I'd ever faced before, and perhaps even greater rewards if only I dared to embrace them fully. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the landscape as I drove to the hiking trail Evelyn had suggested. My heart raced with anticipation and anxiety, a mix of excitement and dread swirling within me. This outing felt different, more intimate than our usual coffee dates or practice sessions. I had spent the entire week wrestling with my feelings for her, and now, standing on the precipice of something new, I could feel the weight of that decision pressing down on me. When I arrived at the trailhead, I spotted Evelyn leaning against her car, a bright smile lighting up her face as she waved at me. She wore a fitted tank top and athletic shorts that showcased her toned arms and legs, and my breath caught in my throat as I took in how effortlessly beautiful she looked in the warm afternoon light. "Hey, ready for an adventure?" she called out, her voice bubbling with enthusiasm, and I nodded, trying to match her energy despite the butterflies fluttering wildly in my stomach. "Absolutely. Let's hit the trail." As we set off, the path wound through towering trees and vibrant wildflowers, the sounds of nature enveloping us like a comforting blanket. We chatted easily about everything and nothing, sharing stories about our favorite hikes and laughing at silly memories from our childhoods. But beneath the surface of our laughter lay an undeniable tension that crackled between us, unacknowledged yet palpable. After a while, we reached a clearing with a breathtaking view of the valley below. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink that seemed to mirror the warmth spreading through my chest whenever I looked at Evelyn. "This is incredible," I breathed, taking in the scenery while trying to steady my racing heart. Evelyn stepped closer to me, her shoulder brushing against mine as we both leaned against a large rock to take it all in. "It really is," she said softly, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "I love coming here to clear my head." I turned to face her fully, feeling an urge to share something deeper, something that had been building between us for weeks. You know, I began hesitantly, I've been thinking a lot about us lately. Her gaze locked onto mine, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. The world around us faded away until it was just the two of us standing there, two souls caught in a moment that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. "What do you mean?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I swallowed hard, my heart pounding in my chest as I took a step closer. "I mean, I think there's something special between us. Something more than just coach and swimmer." Evelyn's breath hitched slightly as she processed my words. The vulnerability in her eyes mirrored my own fears, an acknowledgement of what lay beneath our friendship, but also an unspoken hesitation about where it could lead. "I feel it too," she admitted finally, her voice trembling slightly. "But, Sarah, this could complicate everything." "I know," I said quickly, desperation creeping into my tone. "But what if it's worth it? What if we're missing out on something amazing because we're afraid?" She looked away for a moment, her brow furrowing as she considered my words. The tension hung thick in the air between us, a delicate balance of desire and uncertainty that threatened to tip either way. "I've never felt this way about anyone before," Evelyn confessed quietly, turning back to meet my gaze. "You make me feel alive again." My heart soared at her admission. It was everything I had hoped for yet feared all at once. "Then let's not ignore it," I urged gently. "Let's explore this, whatever it is." In that moment, something shifted within her. An internal battle waged behind those captivating eyes as she weighed the risks against the undeniable pull between us. And then she took a step closer, closing the distance between us until we were mere inches apart. "Okay," she said breathlessly, "but we have to be careful." Before I could respond, she reached out and cupped my face with her hand, a simple gesture that sent shivers down my spine. My heart raced as I leaned into her touch instinctively, feeling drawn to her warmth like a moth to flame. Evelyn hesitated for just a heartbeat before leaning in closer. Our breaths mingled in the space between us as anticipation built like a crescendo ready to explode into something beautiful. And then it happened. A soft brush of lips against lips that ignited every nerve ending in my body. It was tentative at first, a gentle exploration filled with uncertainty, but as I melted into her kiss, all doubts fell away like leaves caught in an autumn breeze. Her lips were warm and inviting. They tasted like coffee and laughter, the essence of everything we had shared together spilling over into this singular moment of connection that felt both surreal and intoxicating. My hands found their way to her waist instinctively as I pulled her closer, deepening the kiss with every ounce of longing I had kept buried inside. But just as quickly as it began, our kiss broke apart, a gasp escaping both our lips as we pulled away slightly to catch our breath. The world around us came rushing back, the sounds of rustling leaves and distant birdsong filling the silence where only our hearts had echoed moments before. "What just happened?" Evelyn breathed, her eyes wide with shock and exhilaration. I don't know," I stammered breathlessly, still reeling from what had just transpired between us. The weight of our feelings laid bare under the fading light of day. Evelyn's expression shifted from surprise to uncertainty. There was fear lurking behind those beautiful eyes now, a fear of what this meant for us moving forward. "We can't just pretend this didn't happen," she said slowly, taking a step back as if creating physical distance would somehow shield us from the emotional fallout. "I don't want to pretend," I replied urgently, reaching out for her hand instinctively but hesitating before making contact. "I want this, whatever this is." "But what about everything else?" Evelyn asked softly, biting her lip as she glanced away toward the horizon where colors were fading into twilight. "What will people think? What if it affects your training? My coaching?" The reality of those questions crashed down on me like waves against rocks, each one threatening to pull me under with its weighty implications. But amidst that turmoil was an undeniable truth. What we had just shared felt too significant to ignore or dismiss lightly. "I don't care what people think," I admitted fiercely. "This is about us, about how we feel." Evelyn looked back at me then, There was something raw in her expression, an acknowledgement of both desire and fear battling within her heart. "I need time," she said finally. Regret tinged her voice as she stepped back further into the shadows cast by encroaching nightfall. "I need to figure things out." My heart sank at her words, a mix of disappointment and understanding flooding through me. But deep down inside was an ember of hope that refused to die out completely. "Okay," I replied softly, feeling vulnerable yet resolute in my desire for honesty between us. "Take all the time you need." As we stood there under the fading light, two souls caught between longing and uncertainty, I couldn't shake off how much had changed in an instant. How one kiss could unravel everything while simultaneously weaving new threads into our lives, and though unresolved tension hung heavily between us like storm clouds ready to burst, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever path lay ahead would be filled with challenges unlike any I'd ever faced before, and perhaps even greater rewards if only we dared to embrace them fully. The days that followed the kiss felt like an emotional roller coaster, each moment a dizzying blend of exhilaration and dread. I replayed that fleeting connection with Evelyn over and over in my mind, the warmth of her lips still lingering like a sweet ache. But alongside that memory came a torrent of guilt and fear. Fear of what we had done, what it could mean for both of us, and the potential fallout that loomed on the horizon. As I returned to training, I found it increasingly difficult to focus. Every time I entered the pool, I was reminded of Evelyn, her laughter echoing in my ears, the way her eyes sparkled with mischief and warmth. But now, those memories were tinged with uncertainty. Each stroke felt heavier as I battled against the weight of my emotions. At practice that week, I noticed a shift in our dynamic. Evelyn was distant, her laughter less frequent, her smiles more reserved. It was as if she was trying to put up a wall between us, and every time our eyes met across the pool, I felt a pang of longing mixed with heartache. I wanted to reach out, to bridge that gap, but every time I opened my mouth to speak, the words caught in my throat. One evening after practice, as we were packing up our gear, I decided to confront the tension head-on. "Evelyn," I started hesitantly, glancing around to ensure we were alone. "Can we talk?" She paused, her back turned to me as she folded her towel. "About what?" Her voice was cool and guarded. "About what happened," I said carefully. "I don't want to pretend it didn't happen." She turned slowly to face me, her expression unreadable. "Sarah, I know it's complicated," I interrupted, my heart racing. "But I can't stop thinking about you, about us." Evelyn sighed heavily, running a hand through her hair as if trying to clear her thoughts. "I've been thinking about it too, but we need to be realistic here." "Realistic?" The word stung more than I expected. "What's unrealistic about wanting to explore this connection? We have something special." She shook her head slowly, frustration flickering in her eyes. "It's not that simple. There are so many factors at play, my job, your career. What if this affects your training? What if people find out? Are you worried about what people will think?" I challenged softly. Her gaze dropped to the floor for a moment before she looked back up at me. "It's not just about that. It's about everything we've worked for." The weight of her words sank into my chest like stones in water. "So you're saying it's better for us to just forget it ever happened?" "I'm saying we need to think carefully before diving into something that could ruin everything," she replied firmly. The air between us grew thick with unresolved tension as silence stretched on. My heart ached at the thought of losing what little we had built together, the laughter, the shared moments, but deep down, I also understood her fears. "I get it," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. "But if we don't take this chance now, then when?" Evelyn looked away again, her expression pained as she seemed lost in thought. "I just need time," she said quietly. "Okay," I replied reluctantly. "I'll give you time." That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind raced with possibilities and fears alike. The kiss had opened a door inside me, a door filled with hope and longing, but now it felt like that door was being slammed shut before I could step through. The next few days passed in a blur of training and restless nights filled with dreams of Evelyn, dreams tinged with both passion and despair. Each time we practiced together, an invisible barrier seemed to grow between us, a chasm filled with unspoken words and unacknowledged feelings. Then came Wednesday evening, a day that would change everything. After practice, while I was showering off the chlorine from another exhausting workout, my phone buzzed insistently on the bench outside the stall. When I finally emerged wrapped in a towel and checked my messages, my heart sank at the sight of an incoming call from my best friend Mia. "Hey, what's up?" I answered cheerfully despite the knot tightening in my stomach. "Sarah, you won't believe who just showed up at the cafe." Mia exclaimed excitedly. "Who?" "Evelyn," she said breathlessly. My heart raced at the mention of Evelyn's name. Confusion washed over me like cold water. "What do you mean? Why would she be there?" "She was meeting someone," Mia continued casually, but then added with a hint of concern in her voice. "And it looked serious." My stomach twisted into knots as Mia relayed how she had spotted Evelyn sitting at a table with another woman, an older woman who seemed familiar but whom I couldn't quite place at first. "Do you think she's dating someone?" Mia asked cautiously. "I don't know," I replied slowly, feeling a sense of dread creeping in. "But if she is, why didn't she tell me?" I ended the call shortly after that, but couldn't shake off the feeling of unease settling over me like a heavy fog. My mind raced with possibilities. Who is this woman? What did this mean for us? Did Evelyn truly want something more with me, or was she already moving on? The following day during practice felt unbearable. Every stroke through the water felt heavy with uncertainty as thoughts of Evelyn consumed me. When our eyes met across the pool again, there was an unmistakable tension hanging in the air, a mix of longing and fear that threatened to suffocate me. After practice ended, I approached Evelyn cautiously as she packed up her things. "Can we talk?" She looked up at me. There was something guarded in her expression that made my heart sink further. "I'm kind of busy right now," she replied tersely. "Busy or avoiding?" Her gaze hardened slightly at my words. There was a flicker of anger behind those beautiful eyes before it quickly faded into something more vulnerable, something that made my chest ache even more. "I'm not avoiding anything," she snapped defensively before softening again almost immediately. "I just need space." "Space? Or are you trying to figure out how to handle whatever is happening between us?" Evelyn sighed heavily. Frustration etched across her face as she ran her fingers through her hair again, an all-too-familiar gesture when she was overwhelmed. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted finally, vulnerability breaking through her defenses for just a moment before they reasserted themselves, once more like walls closing around her heart again. "What do you mean?" My voice trembled slightly, fear creeping into every syllable as realization dawned upon me. Maybe this connection wasn't just complicated. It could be dangerous for both of us if we didn't navigate it carefully. "I mean, everything feels so intense right now," she said quietly, pain flickering behind those gorgeous eyes like flames threatening to consume everything they touched. Before I could respond further or reach out for comfort again, the moment shattered completely when another swimmer approached us, a teammate named Jenna who had always been friendly but never particularly close. "Hey, sorry to interrupt," Jenna said cheerfully, as though sensing our tension but oblivious nonetheless. "Are you guys coming out tonight? A few of us are heading over to the dive after practice." Evelyn glanced at me briefly before turning back toward Jenna, relief washing over her features as though grateful for an escape from our conversation, an escape from whatever lay ahead between us. "Yeah, sounds fun," Evelyn replied too quickly, enthusiasm returning instantly as though nothing else mattered anymore except fitting back into this world where everything felt safe again, even if only temporarily. As they chatted animatedly about plans for later that evening, I stood there feeling like an outsider looking in, my heart heavy with unspoken words left hanging in the air between us like smoke from extinguished flames. A reminder of what could have been yet remained unresolved forevermore. After they finished talking and Jenna wandered off, I took one last look at Evelyn, who seemed lost in thought again, her smile fading slightly as reality set back in around us once more, and knew then that whatever path lay ahead would be filled with challenges unlike any I'd ever faced before, and perhaps even greater rewards if only we dared embrace them fully despite all obstacles standing between us now, including fear itself, which threatened to tear apart everything we'd built together thus far. The days that followed felt like an eternity, each moment stretching out as I grappled with the uncertainty of my relationship with Evelyn. The distance between us seemed to grow wider, filled with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. I tried to focus on my training, but each stroke in the pool felt heavy, burdened by the weight of my emotions. The laughter we once shared was replaced by a tense silence that hung in the air like a storm cloud waiting to break. Then came the night of the dive, a local bar where our teammates often gathered after practice. I had debated whether to go, torn between wanting to see Evelyn and fearing the potential for awkwardness. But ultimately, I couldn't resist the pull of camaraderie and the hope that maybe, just maybe, I could bridge the gap between us. As I walked into the bar, the familiar sounds of laughter and music washed over me. I spotted a group of teammates huddled around a table, drinks in hand and smiles on their faces. But my eyes were drawn immediately to Evelyn, who sat at the far end of the table, animatedly chatting with Jenna. She looked radiant under the dim lights, her laughter ringing out like music that tugged at my heart. I took a deep breath and made my way over, forcing myself to smile despite the knot of anxiety twisting in my stomach. As I approached, Evelyn glanced up, and our eyes met, an electric moment that sent a jolt through me. But just as quickly as it ignited, it flickered out. She turned back to her conversation with Jenna as if nothing had happened. "Hey, Sarah," Jenna called out cheerfully when she noticed me standing there. "Join us." I slid into an empty seat next to Evelyn, trying to gauge her mood without being too obvious. She greeted me with a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, an acknowledgement of my presence, but not much more. "Having fun?" I asked, attempting to keep the conversation light. "Yeah, just catching up," she replied, her tone casual yet distant. The night wore on with laughter and chatter swirling around me like a whirlwind while I felt increasingly adrift. Each time I tried to engage Evelyn in conversation, she deflected or redirected her attention elsewhere. It was as if she was trying to shield herself from whatever was brewing beneath the surface between us. Finally, after what felt like hours of forced laughter and small talk, I decided enough was enough. "Evelyn," I said firmly but softly once there was a lull in conversation. "Can we talk?" Her expression shifted slightly, surprise mingled with apprehension, as she looked at me.
"Now."
"Yes," I replied, feeling a surge of determination wash over me. "Please." I stood up and gestured toward a quieter corner of the bar away from our friends. After a moment's hesitation, she followed me reluctantly. Once we were away from prying ears, I turned to face her fully. "What's going on? We can't keep pretending everything is fine when it's not." Evelyn crossed her arms defensively, her gaze shifting away from mine as if searching for an escape route. "I don't know what you want me to say." "I want you to be honest with me," I insisted gently but firmly, "about what happened between us and where we stand now." She took a deep breath and finally met my gaze again. There was vulnerability in her eyes that made my heart ache. "I've been thinking about it a lot," she admitted quietly. "But it's complicated." "Complicated how?" I pressed gently. "I care about you, I really do," she began slowly. "But I'm scared of what this means for both of us, for your career and mine." "Evelyn," I said softly, stepping closer so that our voices wouldn't carry beyond our little bubble. "I don't want to lose you because we're afraid of what might happen." Her expression softened slightly at my words. There was a flicker of hope behind her guarded demeanor that made me feel lighter for just a moment. "But what if it does ruin everything?" she asked quietly. "Then we deal with it together," I replied earnestly. "I'd rather take that risk than walk away without knowing what could be." Evelyn looked down for a moment. Uncertainty flickered across her features as she weighed my words against her fears. But then she looked back up at me, her eyes shining with something deeper than fear, longing. "I want this too," she confessed hesitantly, stepping closer until there was barely any space left between us. "But can we take it slow?" Just figure things out without all the pressure? Of course, I said softly, feeling relief wash over me like sunlight breaking through clouds after a storm. Slow sounds perfect. In that moment, something shifted within both of us. A shared understanding that while fear would always be present, so too would be our desire for connection and love. As we stood there in our own little world amidst the noise of laughter and music surrounding us, I reached out tentatively and took her hand in mine, a simple gesture that felt monumental in its significance. "I'm here," I whispered softly as our fingers intertwined, an unspoken promise hanging between us like a fragile thread. Connecting two hearts ready to explore new possibilities together, the night unfolded around us as we rejoined our teammates at the table, laughter spilling forth more freely now as though an invisible weight had been lifted from both our shoulders. And for the first time since that fateful kiss, I felt hopeful about what lay ahead. But even amidst this newfound clarity, the uncertainty remained. Questions lingered about how others would react if they found out about us, or how this would affect our training. But now those fears didn't feel insurmountable anymore. They felt manageable because we were facing them together. As the evening wore on and laughter filled the air, I couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed within me throughout this journey, how love had challenged me to confront my fears head-on, how vulnerability had opened doors within myself that I never knew existed, how embracing uncertainty could lead to unexpected joys waiting just beyond those walls built from fear. Alone, and while there would undoubtedly be challenges ahead, moments where doubt might creep back in or societal pressures might threaten our connection, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever path lay before us would be worth every step taken together, every risk embraced, every moment cherished along this journey toward love. As we left the dive that night hand in hand, our fingers entwined like vines growing stronger together, I couldn't help but feel grateful for everything that had brought us here. Every laugh shared, every tear shed, every moment spent navigating this beautiful yet complicated tapestry woven from threads of longing and connection, and above all else, a newfound understanding that love was worth fighting for, even when it felt uncertain or terrifying at times. And so began our story anew, a chance at something beautiful waiting just beyond those open doors ready for exploration. A journey filled with promise lingering on the horizon like dawn breaking over darkened skies. A reminder that sometimes taking risks leads not only toward heartache, but also toward joy unlike anything else imaginable if only one dares embrace it fully.